Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom. Let's take a look at the headlines. Federal government announces 5 billion naira palliative each for 36 states in FCT. Reps committee frown at lopsided employment in federal agencies. Plus, Russia opens criminal probe into leader of independent election watchdog. Details of these stories and more in a moment. We'll begin the news tonight with a report that the federal government has announced a 5 billion naira palliative for each state of the federation, including the Federal Capital Territory, to cushion the impact of the removal of the petrol subsidy. The governor of Borno State, Babagana Zulum, made the announcement in Abuja today when he spoke to State House correspondents at the end of a National Economic Council NEC meeting. It will be recalled that Vice President Kashim Shettima presided over the meeting. The council is made up of the governors of the 36 states, governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, and other government officials. Meanwhile, the federal government has pledged continued support for efforts that will rid the country of neglected tropical diseases (NTDs), one of which is onchocerciasis, popularly known as river blindness. The National Coordinator, Neglected Tropical Diseases, Federal Ministry of Health, Fatai Oyediran, gave the assurance at a 2-week workshop held for entomologists drawn across the 6 geopolitical zones that would support the eradication of onchocerciasis in the country. The National Coordinator, while addressing participants at the workshop, said diseases pose a serious obstacle to the national achievement of universal health coverage. According to him, among all NTDs, Nigeria has the highest burden of onchocerciasis globally, adding that in the efforts to eradicate the disease, academics and researchers have been assisting the government in training program officers. To Nigeria's leader now, President Bola Tinubu, who has said education is Nigeria's foremost tool against poverty. Tinubu made this statement today while receiving a delegation from global tech giant Google. He said his administration would leverage digital technology to create Nigeria's desired socio-economic progress that is necessary to transform society, and noted that his administration remained determined to embrace the prospects of digital economy and telecommunications, which he described as the future. Tinubu, while encouraging the delegates to partner with Nigeria, said the youths were good and brilliant people and that his administration takes education very seriously because it is the foremost tool Nigeria has against poverty. Meanwhile, President Tinubu has assured investors that his ongoing repositioning of the economy will receive a boost as he conducts an intensified removal of all bottlenecks in the way of efficient business startup and administration in Nigeria, with a particular emphasis on efficiency in service, tax reviews, and improved security. Receiving the Managing Director of Energy and Natural Resources in Europe, Africa, and Middle East for Standard Chartered Bank, Ade Adeola, President Tinubu said his administration was already working hard and making a difference in attracting investments. The president told the delegation that tax reforms are being undertaken with a close observance of best practices across the globe that will favor businesses for the collective prosperity of the nation. Appointed ministers. The event will hold at the State House Conference Aso Villa in Abuja at 10 a.m. A statement by the Director Information Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Willie Bassey, said the ministers are allowed to come with 2 guests each. He, however, listed the ministers and their assigned portfolios to include Minister of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy, Hannatu Musawa, Minister of Defense, Mohammed Badaru, Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike and Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. Away from that, now the Vice President Kashim Shettima today chaired the National Economic Council NEC meeting in Abuja. The meeting held at the Council Chamber of the Presidential Villa, Abuja, and had in attendance governors from across the Federation and other stakeholders. The meeting was expected to address some of the pertinent economic. Also, it discussed at the meeting were the security challenges across the country with recent attacks in some parts of the north. From the Green Chambers now, where the House of Representatives ad hoc committee investigating job racketeering in federal agencies today frowned at what it described as a gross violation of the provisions of the laws governing employment in the country. The committee also demanded an explanation from the management of the Nigeria Institute for Trypanosomiasis and Onchocerciasis research on why they refused to respect the approval granted them by the head of service of the Federation and the Federal Character Commission. Reports say the committee was particularly not happy with the Nigeria Council for Good Science and Technology for failing to respect the constitutional provision on federal character, employing its foundation staff from only 2 geopolitical zones of the country. But a member of the committee, Wole Oke, observed that the employment of the 65 staff failed to take into consideration the provisions of federal character as contained in the APC. Former House of Representatives members have pledged their support for Abdullahi Ganduje administration and the party at large. Leader of the forum, Abdullahi Salani, made the pledge while paying a solidarity visit to the National Secretariat of the party in Abuja today. Salani stated that the forum is very positive that Ganduje will lead the party to continuously forming government in the Federal Republic of Nigeria, adding that the forum is offering itself for any of the All Progressives Congress.
Here to let you know that we members of Swagger, we are very much elated, we are very much happy about your selection and eventual election as the national chairman of the party, as well as the national secretary of the party. To show our solidarity, we want to show our support to you. We want to say that you can always count on us day and night to give you the necessary support and backing. That is the first reason why we are here. We are so happy because we know the two of you are eminently qualified.
APC National Chairman Abdullahi Ganduje promised the forum that the party shall involve them in what they are doing because the nation's diversities.
Is a man of institutions. He believes in developing institutions. And by developing institutions, high degree of sustainability. And the high degree of sustainability is not because he developed institutions, then he has laid the foundation for sustainability. For Lagos, Lagos is a great state, not only in Nigeria, but in Africa. So we want a replica. We want a mirror image of that.
Meanwhile, President and the All Progressive Congress, Chairman of the group, Tayo Adeyemi, gave this assurance at the solidarity visit to the National Chairman of APC, Abdullahi Ganduje, in Abuja today. Adeyemi, while drumming support for the emergence of Ganduje as National Chairman, described him as an uncommon loyalist to President Bola. He will put the party forward. In his remarks, the APC National Chairman said the party will use forward. On judicial matters now, the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has struck out the legal possession of firearms charges against the suspended Central Bank of Nigeria CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele by the federal government. Justice Nicholas Owebo gave the order today following the application of Mohammed Abubakar, the Director of Public Prosecutions DPP in the Ministry of Justice, to withdraw the 2-count charge. Abubakar relied on Section 108 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, and Emefiele's counsel, J.B. Daudu, had a 5 order granting Emefiele 20 million naira bail. In his ruling, Justice Owebo granted the application while condemning the government's. In another development, the management of the University of Calabar, UNICAL, has suspended the Dean, Faculty of Law, Professor Cyril Ndifon, for alleged violation of the provisions of the extant laws and policies. Today, August 17. According to the letter, the suspension came on the Vice Chancellor, according to the letter, has relieved Professor Ndifon of his position as Dean. And on security matters, Defense Headquarters DHQ says 3 officers, 22 soldiers, 2 pilots and crew members were killed. Director of Defense Media Operations Major General Edward Buba made this 14, 2023. He, however, warned that no group will strike its own troops without injurious consequences. The breakdown was given at the bi-weekly briefing of the Defense Media Operations.
Troops will continue to respond with overwhelming military force against any group. The men and women of the military will continue to put themselves in harm's way. Time. Troops.
About the cause of the helicopter crash, he restated that an investigation is still underway to determine the cause and urged citizens to be wary of propaganda by terrorists and remain patriotic.
While conducting offensive operation, entered into an ambush in the government area of Niger State. And then the ambush and the firefight resulted in the death of 3 officers, 22 soldiers, while 7 were wounded in action.
No insurgents had ambushed troops in the Zungeru area of the state, and some gallant troops of the Nigerian army were said to have paid the supreme price. Back here, Akwa Ibom State Governor Pastor Umoino has pledged his readiness to work beyond party lines with federal civil servants from Akwa Ibom State extraction in bringing up more developments to the state. Governor Eno, who stated this during an interactive session he had with the federal commissioners, permanent secretary and directors at the Akwa Ibom State Liaison Office, Abuja, emphasized that he was ready and free to interact with his people, assuring that he will create time to attend to the things that will bring benefit to the state. He further encouraged Akwa Ibom indigents who are occupying top positions at the federal level to use their positions to bring about life-transforming projects back home. Responding to comments raised during the interactive session, the state chief executive maintained that his administration will provide adequate accommodation to Akwa Ibom indigents, working with the Federal Civil Service as well as partner with the Akwa Ibom community in Abuja to start a small housing scheme that will enable indigents resident in the FCT have affordable accommodation. Governor Eno thanked everyone for coming out and implored Akwa Ibom people to be proud of a state God has given to them. The governor also called for the deepening of the spirit of togetherness and to support his administration to make a better Akwa Ibom. In the meantime, residents of Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital, again lamented the current economic situation of the country, describing it as harsh and unsatisfying. A correspondent, Esther Otoyo, who sampled citizens' opinion on the cost of living, completes this report.
Residents of Uyo, while speaking with Spectrum Television, lamented the effect of the fuel subsidy removal on the economy, noting that it has resulted to an increase in the general cost of living of the citizens. They said that the removal of subsidy at the moment was not a wise decision, stressing that modalities such as functioning refineries should be put in place before subsidy removal.
Economy is something else. I was thinking this new government is coming in to make things easier for us, but the way we're looking at it, I don't think it's like we are from fry pan to fire.
The economy of this country is very, very bad. Of fuel. Cannot even use that fuel to even travel from Akwa Ibom to Calabar. Is that one a country? Is it a life? It's not a life. So our president will try to do something about it.
Now it's hard for people to move from one place to another.
During their experience as a result of the subsidy removal, urged the government to implement social protection measures to mitigate the impact of the subsidy elimination on the vulnerables, such as essential goods and services, subsidies, job creation initiatives, and oil sector reform to increase local production and reduce Nigerians' reliance on
150, 100 naira. So people are suffering. Look at people, fine guys, fine ladies, old men, old women trekking on the road. So the economic of this country is very poor. Are high. Biscuit of 50 naira is now 100 naira. Now present rate of 100 naira is now 150.
Fuel situation is actually not ideal again. 100 naira, and you find it difficult to pay 200 now because most of the vehicle they'll tell you 200. So it's actually very crunchy.
Global bond yields rise. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. As we move on now to Africa, where troops of the Economic Republic of Niger, after the coup seized power from President Mohamed Bazoum, ECOWAS issued a 7-day ultimatum to the military to restore the president or risk sanctions, including possible military action in Niger. It would be recalled that the ECOWAS defense chiefs began their meeting in Ghana today, and the Accra meeting of ambush. Meanwhile, 20 more soldiers were wounded, 6 seriously, in the heaviest losses since the July 26 coup, when the presidential guard ousted Bazoum and detained him and his family. Jihadist insurgency Niger and Burkina Faso in 2015. Soldiers in a recent ambush close to the vulnerable as a result of President Mohamed Bazoum being ousted by the military coup. The West African bloc cautioned the coup plotters about the importance of adhering to its order by re-establishing constitutional order. Soon take up her role in the country's capital, Niamey. Kathleen Verdant Patel described as a critical time. Meanwhile, Patel did not clarify when the new envoy would travel to Niger. However, he told reporters that her travel to Niger does not signal a change in the American government's stance towards the Sahel region. Meanwhile, the foreign ministers are expected to discuss the Niger situation, including sanctions, at a meeting in Toledo. Last month, it was suspending security cooperation and financial support that had been set at 503 million euros in 2021 through 2024 to help improve governance and education. Annalena Baerbock has held talks with African Union Chair Musa Mohammed, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and other stakeholders about the coup in Niger. Mali citing attacks on UN peacekeepers. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said the attacks were unacceptable and condemned such violence, said it had been forced to withdraw earlier than usual from the northern town of Beira amid deteriorating security. The U.S. State Department says the attacks highlight the threat of war. Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, who's been on hunger strike, says the authorities were responsible for Sonko's condition after they charged and detained him for insurrection and conspiracy against the state, among other crimes. There has been no statement from the authorities since 2021, when he was placed under investigation in a moral corruption case. In June, Sonko was sentenced in absentia to 2 months in prison, which he claimed was politically motivated. That triggered angry clear this week. He was charged with fomenting insurrection. Officials linked to a scholarship scandal. The 3 were arrested on Wednesday on allegations that they conspired to steal about 1.1 billion Kenyan shillings meant to fund further education for Kenyan students in Finland and Germany. Today, a magistrate ruled the trial could not begin until all the 4 suspects were presented in court. Meanwhile, Kenyan police had on Wednesday tweeted. In the meantime, the majority of participants of a 3-day meeting in the Democratic Republic of Congo's parliament have voted to lift military rule in 2 eastern provinces deeply affected by long-ranging insecurity. with an aim of fighting armed groups operating in Ituri and North Kivu provinces. But a recent report to the UN Security Council by Secretary General Antonio Guterres last week said the situation has become worse in the two provinces, where about 4 million people have been displaced. So in Africa, more than 60 people reportedly feared dead after a boat carrying migrants from Senegal was found off Cape Verde in West Africa. Reports say 38 people, including children, were rescued on the island of Sal. Meanwhile, Cape Verde officials have called for global action on migration to help prevent further loss of life. On the foreign scene, a number of people are feared dead after a private jet crashed into a road while attempting to land in Malaysia. Police told newsmen that 2 motorists and 8 people on board were killed when it hit Guthrie Highway near Elmina. The aviation authority, however, did not confirm the toll, but reports say the plane, a Beechcraft Model 390, was traveling from Languakiwi. Foreign scene. France's former president Nicolas Sarkozy has terrified territories. To the way things were before is an illusion. The former president insisted that Russian leader Vladimir Putin was not irrational and could be reached with the right kind of diplomacy from Europe, harking back to Moscow's 2008 invasion of Georgia, when Sarkozy said he convinced Putin to withdraw his tanks. Reports say while in office, Sarkozy had deliberately participated in a criminal conspiracy for Russia's seizure of Ukrainian territories. The ex-president, who has spent much of his time since leaving office battling a slew of legal cases, was also attacked at home in France. Elsewhere, prosecutors have asked a judge to set a trial date of March 4 next year for the election racketeering and conspiracy case against former President Donald Trump in the U.S. state of Georgia. The defense is likely to push for a later start, with the 77-year-old Republican billionaire facing 4 criminal trials as he bids for a return to the White House. But reports say the proposal would place the opening just one day before Super Tuesday, when more than a dozen states vote in the Republican primary contest that determines who will be the party's flag bearer in the 2024 election. It would also come just 8 days before Georgia's vote. Recall that Trump was indicted Monday on charges of racketeering and a string of election crimes after a sprawling 2-year probe into his efforts to overturn his 2020 defeat to Joe Biden in the Peach State. Meanwhile, an Iranian filmmaker and his producer reportedly face prison time and being barred from filmmaking after they showcased a movie at the Cannes Film Festival without government approval, drawing immediate criticism internationally from leading American director Martin Scorsese and others. Director Saeed Rostai and producer Javed Norozbegi traveled to Cannes last year to show Leila's Brothers, competing for the festival's Grand Palme d'Or Prize. The film focuses on a family struggling to make ends meet as Iran faces international sanctions, and includes sequences showing protests in the Islamic Republic as a series of nationwide demonstrations shook the nation. The film also depicts security forces beating demonstrators protesting Iran's ailing economy, which has already sparked mass protests and bloody security force crackdowns, killing hundreds. The family in its loss loses all its savings over the rapid depreciation of Iran's rial currency, something Iranians across the country have lived with for years. Additionally, the aging patriarch, holding his family's wealth and forcing them into squalor for a chance at personal glory, can be seen as an allegory to Iran's theocracy. In the meantime, Israel said the United States today approved the landmark sale of the Arrow-3 hypersonic missile defense system to Germany in the country's biggest military deal worth $3.5 billion. The The RO-3 system, an interceptor designed to shoot down ballistic missiles above the Earth's atmosphere, is jointly developed and produced by Israel and the United States. Israel's defense ministry said in a statement the U.S. State Department had notified it of the U.S. government's approval for Germany to procure the RO-3 system. The ministry said senior officials from the Israeli and German defense ministries would sign a letter of commitment to the deal with a preliminary payment of $600 million. Elsewhere, thousands ordered to flee wildfires advancing on one of the largest cities in Canada's far north crammed into a local airport today to board emergency evacuation flights as convoys snaked south to safety on the only open highway. The order late Wednesday to evacuate Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories marked the latest chapter of a terrible summer for wildfires in Canada, with tens of thousands of people forced to leave their homes and vast swathes of land scorched. Tiffany Champagne was one of many awaiting flights at the airport in Yellowknife. As of early today, more than 1,000 wildfires were burning, including about 230 in the Northwest Territories. Meanwhile, more than 20,000 residents of Yellowknife, the regional capital, have been given until noon Friday to leave by road or on commercial and military flights. Still on the foreign scene, the Russian authorities have opened a criminal investigation into one of the leaders of a prominent independent election monitoring group. The case against Gregory Melkonian, co-chair of Russia's leading election watchdog Golos, is the latest step in the months-long crackdown on Kremlin critics and rights activists that the government ratcheted up after sending troops into Ukraine. And while Melkonian's lawyer Mikhail Beryukov told the Associated Press that his client is facing charges of organizing activities of an undesirable group, a criminal offense punishable by up to 6 years in prison. Golos has not been labeled undesirable, a label that under a 2015 law makes involvement with such organizations a criminal offense, but it was once a member of the European Network of Election Monitoring Organizations, a group that was declared undesirable in Russia in 2021. Meanwhile, the Prime Ministers of Estonia, Kaja Kallas, Latvia, Artas Karins, and Lithuania, Ingrida Samoniente, have released a joint statement confirming they are joining the G7 declaration of support for Ukraine. In the signed statement, they noted that only NATO membership will provide Ukraine with security guarantees. The Prime Ministers added that they will work with Ukraine within the multilateral framework to establish security commitments and arrangements that would help Ukraine win the war as soon as possible. And now it's time for the latest business and stock market stories. Here is Davina Prazoman.
Thank you, Xavier Roberts. Good evening. It is business news. My name is Davina Praise Omang. In the news, government bond yields around the world matched higher as investors anticipate that interest rates will remain elevated due to persistent high inflation. The latest Fed minutes showed officials continue to see significant upside risks to inflation, which could require further tightening of monetary policy. Cocoa prices rise towards 12 to half-a-year highs. Cocoa prices jumped above $3,400 a ton, approaching levels not seen in over 12 years, amid a deteriorating outlook for global supply against a backdrop of rising demand. Traders noted that concerns that Ghana, the world's second-largest cocoa producer, not being able to meet certain cocoa contracts for a second season led to an increase in prices. Ghana's cocoa regulator postponed 44,000 metric tons of cocoa shipments to future seasons due to a weak harvest as a lack of fertilizers and black pod disease hurt cocoa yields. Ghana's 2022 and 2023 cocoa crop is now expected at around 650,000 metric tons, a 13-year low, and 24% below initial estimates of 850,000 metric tons. This would add more pressure to global cocoa markets, where prices have surged due to adverse weather affecting top producers. Meanwhile, Ivory Coast, the largest exporter, anticipates a nearly 20% reduction in its upcoming main crop harvest compared to the previous year. In Nigeria, Transcorp Power Limited has consolidated its position in Nigeria's power sector as it acquired a 60% stake in Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, AEDC. Following the acquisition, Christopher Eziafulukwe, the managing director and CEO of Transcorp Power Limited, has been appointed as the new managing director and CEO of AEDC. Transcorp Group, whose biggest shareholder is businessman Tony Elumelu, is one of Nigeria's leading conglomerates with investments in the hospitality, power, and oil and gas sectors. Nigerian stock market report. At the end of today's trading session, a total of 320.34 million shares in 5,176 deals, corresponding to a market value of 3.72 billion naira, were traded. Compared to Wednesday trading day, today's data shows 10% improvement in volume, 50% decline in turnover, and 17% decline in deals. The current market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange is 35.1 trillion naira. In the aggregate, 116 listed equities participated in trading, ending with 21 gainers and 18 losers. John Holt led the gainers with 10% share price appreciation, closing at 1 naira 32 kobo per share. On the losing side, Guinea Insurance came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 8.57% at 32 kobo per share. Fidelity Bank recorded the highest volume of 80 million traded shares, followed by Transcorp Nigeria with 34.3 million and United Bank of Africa with 24.4 million traded shares. This is all on business news. Thank you, and back to Xavier Roberts for the rest of the news.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Still to come in the news. Chelsea suffer a huge injury blow. Do stay with us. Glad to have you back. Now on our health news, the World Health Organization WHO has opened its first summit on traditional medicine today, with the group saying it was seeking to collect evidence and data to allow for the safe use of such treatments. In his remark, the WHO chief Tedros Ghebreyesus said the agency is working to build the evidence and data to inform policy, standards and regulations for the safe, cost-effective and equitable use of traditional medicine. Tedros, while noting that traditional medicines are a first port of call for millions of people worldwide, said it could bridge healthcare access gaps but was of value if used appropriately, effectively and safely. Still in health, endocrinologists have advised people with blood sugar levels that are high but not up to the level that it can be diagnosed as type 2 diabetes to avoid consuming junk food. The expert said such individuals have a medical condition known as pre-diabetes, while noting that progression from pre-diabetes to type 2 diabetes is not inevitable. The endocrinologists stressed that it could be reversed through proper diets and exercises. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC), pre-diabetes is a serious health condition that puts people at increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes, heart diseases and stroke. The CDC noted that pre-diabetes mostly goes undetected until it progresses into type 2 diabetes. which is considered a very serious health condition. The experts therefore urged people with pre-diabetes to avoid sweetened beverages, alcohol, and over-processed food. They explained that heavily processed foods often contain added sugar, a fast-acting carbohydrate that can quickly spike insulin levels. Let's head over now to Isaac for latest sports stories.
Well, thank you very much. In sports, Chelsea have suffered a huge setback ahead of their second game of the season. The Blues captain, Rhys James, has suffered another injury setback. Chelsea reporter Nathan Gieson said the new promoted captain has picked up a fresh hamstring injury. He picked up the injury in Sunday's Premier League opener against Liverpool. The 23-year-old played 76 minutes before pulling out and was then replaced by Frenchman Malo Gusto for his club debut. It is claimed James is having a scan later today, but the early signs are not good for the Chelsea captain. Moving on to transfers, England-born Nigerian striker Chuba Akpom has left English Championship club Middlesbrough for Dutch giant Ajax. In a statement released by Ajax on the website on Wednesday, Akpom had signed a 5-year contract. The 27-year-old scored 29 goals last season and was named the Championship Player of the Year. Akpom, who is of Nigerian descent, is still eligible to play for Nigeria. In May 2016, it was reported that he was one of the 3 players formally approached by the NFF. In September 2019, he confirmed that he intended to play for Nigeria at international level. Well, moving on, Crystal Palace winger Michael Olise has signed a new 4-year deal with the club amidst interest from Chelsea. On Tuesday, it was reported that the Stamford Bridge club had activated a release clause in the region of £35 million for the France under-21 international. But Palace chairman Steve Parish confirmed today that the London-born 21-year-old would be staying put. Olise joined from Reading on a 5-year deal in 2021, but was in Chelsea's youth system before leaving age 14. Olise is currently recovering from a hamstring injury that he picked up playing for France in the Euros under-21, but enjoyed an impressive campaign last season, which he registered 11 assists, scored 2 goals in 37 games, earning the club's Player of the Year award. But that's it on sports. My name is Isaac. Isaac, back to you.
Many thanks, Isaac. And now on our entertainment news, Michael Packison, the veteran British chart show host whose decade-spanning career featured interviews with some of the world's highest-profile figures, has died at the age of 88. His BBC show Packison, which first aired in June 1971, made him a household name. According to reports, he died late on Wednesday following a brief illness. Muhammad Ali, Fred Astaire, Elton John, Paul McCartney and Peter Sellers were just a few of the famous names to grace his interview couch. Others included Lauren Bacall, David Bowie, Tom Cruise, Helen Mirren and Gwyneth Paltrow. Comedian actor, compere and skit maker Nosar Falabi, popularly known as Lasisi Elene, has said stand-up comedy is harder than the art of skit making. Speaking during an interview where he was asked which of the two forms of comedy was harder, he compared the two and noted that stand-up comedy was more difficult. Defending his stance, Lasisi said both stand-up comedy and skit making have a different feel. However, added that there was a lot of pressure in stand-up comedy. Lasisi further stated that even though both forms are lucrative, comedians and skit makers must infuse creativity into their work. And lastly, on entertainment tonight, Nigerian singer Ira Star is set to thrill fans around the globe with her first world tour. The Gen Z, as she is fondly called, is embarking on the tour tagged 21, the world tour. The tour will span 3 continents, America, Africa and Europe. North America leg, the United States and Canada. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You've been watching Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Roberts, wishing you a good night, West. Bye-bye.